So let's move on to the next speaker, Gengchen Mai from the University of Texas at Austin.
Hello, everyone. It's my great honor to come here to present my recent work about foundation model for geospatial artificial intelligence. So basically, the idea is how do we use domain knowledge to guide, for example, large language model and multi-modality language model to solve different geospatial tasks. So currently, all the AI domains face a paradigm shift, switching from a task-specific model to foundation model. So foundation model, in general speaking, is a large task-agnostic pre-trained model, which can be adapted to a wide range of domains. So we have seen many successful stories in various domains, natural language processing, computer visions, reinforcement learning, and so on and so forth. Now, as a researcher in geography and geographic information science, the question which interests me most is whether the foundation models can be applied on different geospatial tasks. And if the performance is not so good, how could we use the knowledge to guide the current foundation model to help them to improve the performance? So here I show some examples, basically how to apply the knowledge guidance for foundation models on different geospatial tasks, for example, from geospatial semantics, from sustainability, from urban geography, and so on and so forth. So the first task is about geospatial semantics. More specifically, we want to do location description extractions. So if you are not familiar with this task, it's basically I want to extract multi-entity location description from disaster-related social media messages. So very interesting observation is when the disaster comes, for example, a flood or hurricanes, many of the users will send out disaster-related tweets or social media message to call for disaster evacuation effort. So for example, on the table on the left, we show some example people send out during the Hurricane Harvey. But I mean, how people describe their location description vary a lot from people to people, from location to location. But accurately recognize this location description is very key for us to deliver the disaster evacuation effort. So it is very important for us to know like how many ways people have used to describe their locations. So based on our systematic study, we have been, so this is a work done by my colleagues, Professor Yingjie Hu. So basically, he classified how people describe the location into 11 different types. For example, it can be door number address, it can be street names, it can be exit of the highways, it can be intersection of two roads. So this is very important because in this disaster response moment, it's very important for you to know exactly where people is to save the evacuation times. So the question is whether we can use some existing tools such as name entity recognition or toponym recognition tools. The problem is no, because for example, as you can see in the figure on the below, if we want to apply some existing name entity recognition tools, we will recognize this location description into separate entities individually. But ideally, we want to recognize them as a full address to describe where the actually the victim is. So on the right side, it's basically showing what we aim to extract. So in order to do that, we have to, our idea is whether we can use large language models such as ChatGPT and GPT-4 to do that. But if you naively put this sentence into the language models, it will not learn. Maybe he know the door number address and maybe building numbers, but he doesn't know like the variation of different way people have described their locations. So we have defined what we call geo-knowledge guided GPT, basically tell the language model, this is the different ways people have described their locations and help them, LM, to accurately extract these location descriptions. So the figure on the right showing that we compare our geo-knowledge guided GPT with a lot of well-established baseline, such as fine-tuned BERT and so on and so forth. And this bar plot showing that across these 11 different location descriptions, most of the categories, this GPT, although in the future learning settings, it can already outperform these baselines, which is very interesting. But this is not the end of the story. This is just extracting the descriptions. The most key thing is we want to localize them on the map, right? So the issue is we want to return a coordinate to the disaster evacuation team so they can go there. So now the question is, okay, whether we can ask LM to do the same tasks. Sadly, we can. Based on our experiment, it's very hard. For example, as we show the prompt on the left, if we want to ask the ChatGPT to recognize the place name, it is okay. But you ask them to return the geographic coordinate. In many of the time, it cannot, especially for the complex location description. For example, the intersection of two roads, it cannot do that. Why is that? Because by design, these language models cannot handle other data modalities such as geographic coordinate, because LM tokenizers, they cannot recognize these long digital strings, which cannot interpret the spatial distance, direction, and so on and so forth. So now the question is, okay, but almost all the geospatial tasks have to involve geographic coordinate. So then does that mean the end of story, or could we use some knowledge to guide the LM to understand this, basically handle the geographic coordinate? So there are two perspectives. One is encoding. So basically, how could we guide the LM to understand or interpret the geographic coordinate? So another aspect is decoding. So basically, how can we guide the LM to generate a meaningful geographic coordinate, just like what we see before? So this is end up with two papers we published this year. So the first one we call it the GeoAI. So basically it's based on the idea of retrieval augmented generations. So the idea is, let's just test whether the pre-trained large language model have geographic knowledge. The way how we test it is we just give a ChatGPT, we give them a coordinate, and we ask them some sustainability index, for example, population density, women education index, water qualities. But as you can see in the figure on the here, if you naively put the coordinate there, the LM doesn't understand that, just as because of reason we have discussed. But how do we guide the LM to understand this? We can adopt some RAG techniques. So basically, we can argument the prompt with, for example, the full address descriptions, as well as, for example, nearby places, like how far and in which direction the nearby places is. And surprisingly, if you add these informations, this LM start to understand which the queried place is and can estimate the population density or other sustainability index correctly. We call this framework as GeoLM, and this is published in iClear this year. So we have tested different large language models, and using the GeoAI framework to guide these models predict 9 different index, for example, population densities, wealthy index, women BMI, so on and so forth. We found out only fine-tune them on, say, 100 or 1,000 examples, it can outperform the well-established baselines. So very interestingly, but if you plot their prediction errors on the maps, you start to find out that the prediction is not randomly. They have shown some geographic bias. The model tend to predict very well in widely developed areas and, for example, developed countries. But for small towns, the prediction is very poor. So this actually demonstrates a geographic bias inherent by the large language model have used. So the question is, how could we debias them? This is one of the interesting research directions we are currently working on. So the next task is about how do we ask a large language model to decode meaningful geographic coordinate. The one task we use called image geolocalizations. If you are not familiar with this task, it's basically given images such as street view images. You want to ask them where you take this photo. Okay, so basically based on the literatures, there are mainly two mainstream methods to solve this task. One is through image retrieval and matching task. So basically, given a query image, you have a database, you match them based on image similarity, and based on the all the images in your database, you guess, okay, what will be the possible location it is. It is training free, it is very straightforward, but it's purely depend on the database, your geographic coverage, and so on and so forth. Another way is based on the classification model. So basically, you can divide the whole Earth into a hierarchical grid cells and ask the model to classify them into different cells. So this is the advantages it can understand the geographic hierarchy information, but it has inherent limitation because the prediction is limited by the cell size. So it will use the center of the cell to add the predictions. So it will no matter how you try, you will not accurately predict the exact location it is. So now the question is, okay, how could we apply RAGs, combine RAGs with a foundation model to solve these tasks? So this, we call it framework as image to log. So basically, given a query image, if you directly write a naive prompt, you find out that GPT-4 and they cannot give you a meaningful geographic coordinate. So you can see without a RAGs, as you can see in the red box, they will just say, sorry, I don't have the ability to extract the coordinate. So what we do is we build a image database, and we convert the query image into a pre-trained clip image embedding and search in the database based on the image semantics similarities. So have some near list images and farthest images based on the image similarities. And then given these positive examples and negative example, we use them to argument the prompt we have and put into a phrase LM, for example, the GPT-4 and so on, or GPT-4o. We find out with this RAG informations, it will be accurately predict the geographic coordinates. So we actually test it on two well-studied data set, one is image to GPS, one is YFCC. So we find out we play with two foundation models, Lava and GPT-4V. And we found out that even just with this retrieval augmentation without any training, the model can already outperform the state-of-the-art method, the GeoClip published in New York last year, so which is very interesting. So now we have discussed about, okay, how do we guide the language model to first encode the geographic coordinate and decode the geographic coordinate. But we are doing some way to cheating them, because eventually we have to tell them foundation model, where are we querying for and what do we want to do. But eventually, if we want to build a foundation model for geospatial tasks, we have to ask them to be geospatial grounded. So naively, they have to understand where you're asking for. So our vision is, okay, we have to use the geospatial relationship as alignment between data modality when we train a geospatial foundation model. So in order to do that, we have to use a technique called spatial representation learning. Basically, we have to represent the spatial data such as the location, polyline, polygon into the neural network embedding space and use that as one data modalities to contrast with other data, for example, images or text we use here. We have a first, we have some initial results on these directions. So basically, we try to pre-train a model by combining the location informations with image information. So by using some task called GeoAI image classification. So basically, given satellite images, we classify into different categories like land use types, or given species, a photo of species, I want to classify what exactly species it is. But normally speaking, this task has been handled by supervised learning. But the supervised data set is have very limited size, imbalanced geographic coverage, and so on and so forth. But on the other side, when we talk about unlabeled geotagged images, such as satellite images, or such as geotagged species images, as long as there's no labels, there are plenty of them. So the interesting thing is whether we can build a self-supervised objective based on these two data modalities. So given images, given locations, or project them into the embedding space and contrast their representations. So based on this idea, we propose the framework called contrasted spatial pre-training. So based on, we first pre-train the image encoder and location encoder itself under a self-supervising framework. And after this pre-training stage, we can fine-tune both in image encoder and location encoder for further inference. So we test this CSP framework in both fine-grained species recognitions and satellite image classification. We found out that even fine-tuning in 5% of the label data, this CSP framework can significantly improve the model performance. So this is all the work I'm trying to show today. So basically the message is we want to use geographic knowledge to guide the foundation model to handle different geospatial tasks. But eventually, this is some way to going around the key problem, which is ask the foundation model to really understand what geospatial relationship is. So eventually, we have to ask a language model or foundation model to interpret them by design. Yeah, thank you.
Talk.
I promise eventually I'll run out of questions, maybe. Great talk. And really, I really like the task and the approach, but this brings up a question of bias. Every single source of data that you showed is biased, what's known essentially as the socioeconomically biased, including iNaturalist data. So iNaturalist data has huge socioeconomic bias on a global and local scales. So we have a great model for urban higher socioeconomic status, both in terms of the countries and the neighborhoods and zip codes within that country. How do we generalize a model like that? So how do we guard against these kinds of biases? This is a great example. And how do we generalize it beyond, to go beyond these super biased data?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. So actually, we are currently working on this kind of directions. I think in order to solve this kind of task, the first step is how do we quantify this kind of geographic bias in the first place? Because if in Stanford Foundation Model Lab, they actually publish a lot of bias or responsible matrix to quantify like a social bias, like racial bias, and gender bias, and so on and so forth. But currently, there is no measures for geographic bias, and there is no common understanding for this. So currently, we have one paper under review about how do we quantify this geographic bias, and then next is how do we make it an issue. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So you basically, based on your definition of geographic bias, and if you clear your objective, then you can integrate this either in the model regularizer or during model data sampling or during the loss function design. Yeah.
I have a question here. I was wondering, do you use Wikipedia or Wikimedia Commons data sets? Because that seems to have a lot of labeled data with coordinates. And then my second question was, do you think much about like the, I don't know, maybe data privacy issues in terms of like, if this tool is really accurate, somebody could use it to just track some of these movement via social media images or something like that?
That's a very good question. So the first question about whether I'm using Wikipedia. So the work I present here doesn't use that, but in our team, we have previously using the Wikipedia web page to predict the social economic index. It's published in KDD before, but it's a valuable information source. And the second question is about, yes, I agree. The image geolocalization is a very sensitive task, and you will see in the media like people already using that for geolocate. Oh, you are in the second bathroom of SFO airport, which is kind of weird. But I mean, so we are only working on taking this as an example task to see how whether the model can larger model can handle the geographic coordinate. But this is responsible issue is we have to test whether it is good at it, and then how do we disable this kind of like basically switch it back.
Yeah, so very interesting talk. I'm just wondering whether you have lots of different geospatial relationships whether you can recognize based on this relationship, you can do some calculation.
Yes, actually, this is something we are aiming for right now. So you have topological relation, you have cardiac, you have direction relations, and we try to use this kind of spatial relations or to as a like a pre-training objective to train these foundation models, so that this is something to make the foundation model aware of the geospatial information. Yeah.